Talk, it's time to rock. Welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the A-Team. As usual, the Rock Professor's here on time.
No, make it.
Wish I had a beard to stroke.
Yeah. Good to see the Rock Professor. We've got Brad, who's always here on time as well.
That's it. 5 minutes before. 5 minutes. I've made it by 5 minutes.
Good to see you guys. We've got some people in the chat waiting for us. We've got a couple of things that we want to talk about, though, before we crack on with the show, Brad. What's been happening in the United States of America?
Crossroads. Clapton's Crossroads, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a bit of a shout out to Eric Clapton for putting that on. I'm looking forward to seeing some footage from it. I haven't seen much. I've seen a couple of people I follow on Instagram sharing a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to seeing more footage from that, 100%.
Yeah, me too. I haven't seen any footage. I've seen a couple of stills, Simon, you know, that they've been putting up on some social media links. So, like Brad was saying, it'll be great to see some footage. Something will be coming through, I'm sure, over the next couple of hours when people get home, Brad, mainly, I suppose, and they edit.
Yes, 100%. What am I hearing?
Yes.
I'm hearing like a dialing, I'm hearing an internet. Where's that coming from? There it is. That's
the sound of Carl dialing in.
Yeah, you're going to give him a complex. Sorry, bro, we're only joking because we know watches the channel. We've got a couple of other shout-outs that we want to do too. Thanks, obviously, everybody for hanging out, watching us. Brad's going to do a shout-out soon. I think that might be him. Is that you, Carl?
Don't know.
Rock Professor, another good friend of the channel, celebrated
Yes.
a milestone this week.
He has Michael, good friend Michael also, who's been on the channel a few times. He celebrated his 200th gig. So
Yeah.
he's been going out, absolutely cranking them up. So good work, Michael. That's fantastic stuff. Well done. With his acoustic guitar and he's just out there on his own. Yeah,
Fantastic.
brave. So well done for that. That's a fantastic achievement. Here's to 200 more.
Yes.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Another 1,000 more. Another couple of thousand more.
Yeah, a couple of thousand.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things, guys. Brad, you know, before you do your, do you want to do your shout out now? You want to do your shout out, and we'll talk about some channel stuff that's happened over the last week.
Yeah, look, I'll do a quick shout out to people in the chat. What do you think?
Yeah, mate.
All right, so we had Holly Lewis drop in. So Holly's going to be watching later. So thanks for dropping in. Simon, I don't know this guy, Simon Williams. We've got to block him, Andrew. We've got to block that bloke. Arvin, thanks for joining us. 5150 show, that Andrew guy has got to be locked down. We've got to block him, I think. Greg Roberts, Tune. This dude called Brad Cook, he's a pretty handsome dude. He's all right. Leave him. John ZD351, another handsome young man. Comments, so thank you for joining us. We have got my mother, Ellen, has joined us as well. And, of course, the marvellous Carl. So he's joined us. Quentin, thank you for joining us, Quentin. That's all we've got here in the chat at the
Quentin James.
Yes. And, I said my mother, Ellen, thanks for joining us too.
Yeah,
Awesome. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure catching up with Ellen. Thank you. She's been on the show a couple of times, Brad. So, thank you, Ellen. May the tone be with you. May the tone be with you. And that came from our channel too, folks. That saying. May the tone be with you. look, guys. You know, we always try and keep it positive on the channel. You know that. We never try and stray away from controversy when it comes to the history of a band. For example, Carl and Simon, you know, we've spoken about Clapton's drug addictions and his personality traits over the years, you know, and we've never been shy to talk about that. We've had a lot of Fleetwood Mac shows on the channel where we've spoken about the demise of Danny Kerwin and Peter Green's capacities through the famous Munich drug incident. Simon and Brad, I've put something like that up on the channel. You know, most people appreciate that because they get what we're about here on the channel, which is sharing a bit of history. You know, and that's an important history, an important part of the band, despite how difficult and dark that time was, Simon. But you know, it's the beginning of the end for two of the greatest, you know, guitar players in the world, from my own personal opinion. So I don't see that as a celebration of anything bad, negative, or evil. It's a fact. It's happened, and it's part of that history. And another thing too, guys, you know, Brad and I and the Rock Professor and everybody here, none of us have professed to be experts on anything. Bullshitters on a lot of things, yes. Expert bullshitters, maybe. Yeah, but we've never professed to be experts on anything. And if you enjoy what we do, if you like hanging out with us, if you want to be part of what we do and come on and present a record or an album with us, Brad and Simon, or talk about your famous band, we've always had that option open for a lot of people. So go back and have a look at a comment that was put on the channel. It wasn't particularly mean or nasty, so that's why we haven't deleted it. But we've left it on there, you know, from a guy who was saying, you know, why would I watch and listen to three farts talk about the album? Go and listen to the album. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, I would disagree with that.
Yeah.
It's kind of missing the point. Kind of missing
I know.
And another big point that he's missing could be my foot kicking his ass, but we won't go into that either.
Well, you know, the fact that we don't rate anything out of 5 stars. We clearly have a much better rating system. We rate everything out of 10 or 100 or more because that's how seriously we take it.
For the record, I've been a ZZ Top fan all my life. So, and I'm in my 40s, so it's been a long time.
I'm in my 40s.
Yeah, I think what some people forget about, you know, is that there's a whole industry, and I'm not saying that we're an industry, but there is a whole industry of people talking about rock music, Simon. If they're not talking about it, they're writing about it, you know, and we just part and parcel of that whole history, Brad, of just talking about the music we love, and that's what we do. So if you want to be part of the chatting and the talking about the music, this is the channel for you.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
And from the very start, Andrew and Simon, from the very start, or at least when I started with you guys, even though I've been on the channel a while now, I'm still Ronnie Wood, but of the channel. But like the point I'm getting at, is it's just like three guys sitting around in a pub talking about their favorite album. That's what we're doing here. Yep. And everyone else is joining in, and that's the great part about it. It's not like we're experts, like you guys said. We're just having a whole lot of fun here and celebrating the music that we love. So that to that bloke, good on you. And
interact.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly mean or nasty.
It wasn't nasty.
Yeah, but
it's grumpy. It was a bit grumpy, wasn't it?
Just a useless comment, that's all. But thanks for it. We love it. So
yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for the comment
on our faces. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and look, seriously, again, too, you know, we've had, you know, comments in the past, haven't we, you know, where people have sort of said, you know, what are you guys talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, okay, all right. Okay, we don't know what we're talking about. It's okay, fine. All right.
And your point is,
okay.
Yes.
All right.
That's right. We're just guys sitting around the pub drinking beer, listening, talking about our music, favorite music. So that's it.
Yeah. And sorry, Simon, and we've always made that clear, and we've always opened that opportunity up to a lot of people.
Yeah. Good morning to Nelson Rodriguez. Morning, Nelson. Good to see you, man. Hope you're good.
And Jim.
Good to see you, brother.
I'm
Jim,
good, man.
Well, Jim, Jazz Thunder.
Jim as well. Jim's in as well, isn't he? Nice one. Morning, Jim. Sneak up on us.
Brad, so we've got our clickbait eye candy model for us folks again.
Okay.
I'm going to isolate you, so if you can, this is a segue into the show.
In 1992, I purchased this shirt. In 1992, I've been waiting 30-something years to wear it on the show. I don't know if you can see that. That's the tour shirt. This is the official tour shirt I bought it at the Horden Pavilion in 1992.
He was only 4.
I've been waiting that long to wear it. No, I'm joking. I wear it all the time. It's faded as hell, but
yeah. Morning, Jonas Halbach. Good morning, Jonas. How are you? Hope you're good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I say, folks, you know, we have a bit of fun here, and you know, we take talking about the serious subject of music not seriously. And I'm paraphrasing something that John said last week on the show. You know, music is too important to take seriously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, music's the only universal language in the world. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we take music seriously. Don't take ourselves that seriously. That's the point. Anybody's got a nickname of the rock professor needs to be spoken to.
Maybe that's why I got upset, because you're confessing that you're the rock professor. In other words, you know everything about them.
You realise there is somebody called the Professor of Rock. I'm waiting any day to get a cease and desist letter from us.
Well, that's when we know we've made it big, Simon.
Yeah, noticed us.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, because, you know, you are the Professor of Rock. You are the rock professor. You've got rocks and you have a doctorate. So everybody that has a doctorate always embellishes their credentials. You know, I've got a bachelor's, and I can say I've got a master's.
Doctorate.
A PhD.
No, I've got a PhD either. I just got a degree. But that's fine. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
See?
Bigging myself up.
Yeah, I told you we're bullshitters on here.
Yes.
We'll kick off the show, folks. If that's probably a good thing to do. Otherwise, we'll just talk shit all night.
Yeah. Oh dear.
So obviously, folks, the album that we're going to talk about is called Southern Harmony and the Musical Companion. We can talk about where that title of that song came through, I suppose, in the context of some of the songs. If you know anything about it, you know, obviously, quote unquote, the religious aspect of music has always been a big part of the South and the Southern guys and that whole heritage. And these guys, the Robinsons in particular, just picking up on that kind of theme. You know, we've done it before with the band just recently, haven't we? You know, where they're talking about that whole kind of, mystery ethos past of the South, which I find personally intriguing and always interesting. But this album, Brad and Simon, as you know, was their second album. And I have to tell you guys, from listening to it over the last 3 or 4 days, what a killer second album, Brad.
I still see it as like their first album. This is like their first album. Shaky Money Maker is like a demo compared to this, or maybe it was their launching pad to this record, which even though it's their second record, I still see it as their first record. That
is a very, very good point. It's like an EP. It's like Shake Your Money Maker was an EP.
It's like a demo presentation of what the band were capable of
Yeah.
doing. But by this point, they toured a lot. They'd got their mojo, and they were, we'll talk about the new replacement guitarist in a minute and stuff like that. But they'd found their mojo, got their stuff together, and boom, they hit this record. I still reckon to this day, it's a very bold statement, but for me, this record is one of my favorite records from the 90s, if not my favorite record from the 90s.
No argument from me. There's no argument from me, and we'll look forward to hearing what the Rock Professor has to say too, folks, when we share our experiences with the album before we kick off the rankings. So, the album, according to Mr. Wikipedia, was recorded in 91 and 92 and dropped early in May 92. And like a lot of us, we were hanging out for this album. They made a big deal about it. It was promoted by record companies here in New Zealand, and I suspect Australia and the UK, because it reached number 4 in the charts here in New Zealand, number 6 in Oz, and number 2 in the UK charts, which kind of surprised me, Simon, that it managed to get to number 2 in the UK, because it's not something that I would have thought would have got that high in 92. So you got some quick thoughts you want to share on that?
Yeah, well, I think that part of it is the fact it has such a British kind of sound to it, doesn't it? It has,
it sure does.
We'll get into the influences, but the influences are as much British as they are Southern American, and I think there's a whole gamut of influences there. But so, and also I think that I was looking at this, and the interesting thing to me is it's a sort of album that's sort of out of time for 1992, not
Correct.
really in step with anything else in 92, not sonically and not kind of stylistically either. I think it's kind of out on its own. Now I think that 72 to 92 is only 20 years. As we keep saying on these channels, not it seemed like a long time at the time. If that makes sense. But going back, an album that sounded like it was recorded in 1972. Well, it doesn't sound like it was recorded in 1972, but it has those influences and could have been from one of those bands from then. I think appealed to a lot of people, who would look at, for whom that kind of rock music is very attractive, and was great. And what we were brought up on. So I can see that why it was, something of a hit in the UK and people really liked it. And I think coming off the back of a Shake Your Money Maker, I can see why people liked it. And we could talk more about the in step, out of step thing, because I think that's an interesting point about this record.
Yeah, I think both of you have raised some great points there that we can probably elaborate a little bit further on as we go through the tracks. But I do like, in particular, we've got to get the cat out of the bag. The Rock Professor's hinted at it. If you know Ronnie Wood and the Faces, if you know Keith Richards and the Stones, if you've listened to Exile on Main Street, Ooh La La, even Jeff Beck, if you've heard anything like that, Brad, listening to this album, it's just going to be like a hand in glove. And I think that's the experience that the Rock Professor is talking about. And it's one of the things, Brad, that I, as a music fan, instantly fell in love with when I first heard the band. But when I heard this album, it was like, holy cow.
Yes. For me, this record, when it came out, guys, was I was sweating on this album to come out. I'd heard Remedy and I just fell in love with that immediately. I got the album on the day it came out, and it became my go-to album. I had a Datsun 180B. I used to put it on in that, and I'd drive around. I'd drive to Taylor, drive everywhere I drove. I'd put this record on. When I go on surfing trips, I'd put this record on. I still listen to this record regularly. For me, this record connected with me on so many levels. It was like I was just starting to play guitar in the early 90s. I started to get into like all these bands that we ranked tracks on this record, but this one in particular felt like it was my band because it was new. It was something that I connected with this band so much. I actually felt like they were writing the songs for me. And I knew at the time these songs were coming out, we had a lot of bands. Let's talk about it: Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, the grunge movement, as people will call it, which I just call 90s rock. That's how I see it. But you had this sound going on, and these guys were more retro. They had that retro prowess thing going on. They had the Stones, the Faces. I'm hearing Zeppelin. I'm hearing early Aerosmith. I'm hearing even hints of Guns N' Roses. I'm hearing Lenny Kravitz. I'm hearing it all in there in this band. And, that for me was a big point when they said they were going to tour Australia. I dropped everything and I took a day off TAFE and everything to make sure that I got to the concert right up front. I got right up front with my mate from TAFE. It was still to this day one of my most memorable gigs I've ever been to. But this album just hit me like I can't even explain it, like a bag of bricks across the back of the head. It was just insane that I felt like I should have been the guitarist in that band. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Good point and good thoughts.
Just to give you a bit of context, so 93 also had Automatic for the People from REM, Rage Against the Machine, Alice in Chains, Dirt, Eric Clapton Unplugged, of course, one of the Beastie Boys, Check Your Head, Arrested Development, Pavement, Pantera, Vulgar Display of Power. So, there's not much there that is the same stylistically as this album, I don't think. The Predator, Ice Cube, there's a bit of Blind Melon and a Soul Asylum as well, but they're kind of more sort of that kind of not quite grunge, but that kind of Americana thing. But they have similar sorts of things. But it's a bit out there on its own stylistically, I think.
Yeah,
100%. And when we go through the picks too, folks, Brad mentioned a stylistic thing as far as where they looked being crucial. And we've got some picks to illustrate that, It's like they've almost walked, and I'm going to make a reference to this a couple of times during the tracks, out of Nalcote from southern France, and jumped on, Keith's jet, The look was cool. The look was completely in contrast to everything else, including those bands that the Rock Professor mentioned. So again, as a young cat in the early 90s, I was digging it, Brad and Simon. So let's just talk a little bit about the band. So obviously it's two brothers, Chris and Rich Robertson. Chris being the vocalist, Rich the guitar player and main songwriter. You got the new boy on the album, a guy called Mark Ford, and Brad's going to talk a little bit about him specifically during his rankings. And we've got some picks that Brad will mention and talk about his contribution to this album. We've got Johnny Colt on bass and Steve Gorman on drums, who I understand has come out with a really, really good biography that I haven't managed to pick up yet. If anybody is watching this on replay and wants to talk about that biography or let us know their thoughts, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And on keys, Brad and Simon, you've got Eddie. How do you pronounce his surname? Hamsch?
Yes.
Eddie Hamsch?
Harsh.
Yep.
I'm going harsh.
So,
Harsh.
Yeah. Harsh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Eddie, sorry if either of us or one of us or the whole lot of us are getting it wrong. Sorry. We'll just call you Eddie. Great album, great second album. I like what Brad said, folks, that it's in the context of their first album, maybe a test EP, a test run before this album came out. Good point. I'll never look upon it anything other than that from now on, Brad. So, Rock Professor, do you want to tell us quickly your thoughts on how you came across this album? And then, Brad, if you've got some other little holes that you want to fill in before we get into the tracks.
100%.
Well, I came across it a week ago when Andrew suggested we do it as part of our rankings.
You know what they say? Better late than never.
It's fine. One of the great joys about this show is having albums that I haven't listened to. You know, you can't listen to everything. I don't know what I was doing in 1992, but clearly not. I think it's probably focusing on work and stuff and going mad, living in half my time in London, half my time, but in Bristol. But yeah, so I only come across it a week ago. Really, I don't remember hearing much of it at the time. I wasn't really listening to the radio then, but as I say, so yeah, it's been fantastic to because it has all those influences of bands that I like a lot. You know that you clearly, you know, it's only like anything, you know, you're on familiar territory in terms of its reference points. I understand all the reference points. I get them completely. They're all bands I like. You know, what's not to like, really? So it's been great to listen to it. I think that, and we'll get into this in more detail, that one of the interesting things is that is the way it's recorded sonically, how it sounds is interesting. But I have one or two observations about that I'll keep. But yeah, it's been you know, as it has all those things. Yeah, it's been great to listen to it this week. I've been really enjoying, especially driving around in the car, listening to it. It's definitely a driving album, I think.
Perfect album. Perfect album for driving around in your car. Fantastic.
Simon, when you first heard this record, obviously this week that you've just listened to it and really dived into it, what was the first influence you thought of as soon as you heard the album? What was the first influence you think?
Oh, the Faces.
Yeah. I think the Faces more than the Stones. Yeah. But the Stones are 100% in there, that dual guitar thing, the Ronnie Wood, the Keith Richards thing, Mick Taylor thing is there. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Yeah. Well, I would say a bit more Mick Taylor and Keith Richards rather than Ronnie Wood and Keith Richards. I think that, you know, there's definitely clearly that kind of lead guitar thing, and you can talk about that, but you know, there's clearly tremendous lead guitar playing on this record, you know, and kind of thing, and not so much the weaving. It's more of there's a rhythm guitar and there's the lead guitarist, you know, kind of thing, which I think of it more in the Mick Taylor version of the Rolling Stones. Not necessarily, I'm not more than right, but certainly that's the first thing that came to my mind was, oh look, it's the Faces. No, it's not the Faces, but you know, that's the influence, and Chris Robertson on quite a lot of, he sounds like Rod Stewart, doesn't he?
Stewart, yeah,
you know,
he's got the
wow. more than much more than Mick Jagger. It doesn't sound like that really, but you know.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got moves like Jagger, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he does, if you watch any live footage, and I sent Andrew a fantastic gig on YouTube this week, yesterday, I think it was. So I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, Andrew, but I'll send it to you too, Rock Professor, at some point. But we might share it. We might share it in the description of this show afterwards. But for me, again, guys, it's just a really important album for me. I really, really did connect with the album, like I said. But one of the things I connected with the most was the new guitar player, Mark Ford. I found his guitar playing was right up my alley. It was right that all the things I was learning to do on guitar and the things I aspired to do as a guitar player were there. The influences from all the things I was listening to at the time were there as well. So there was a instant connection for me. That's basically all I've got to add on that, Andrew and Simon, than what I said before, how I really connected with this record. But even to this day, I still really, really admire Mark Ford as a guitar player, as one of my, 90s influences, big one.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I'm going to reiterate what I said before, folks. During the pick showing segment of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about Mark, because rock and roll's more than just being a great musician and guitar player. It's about looking cool, and this band looked really, really cool, bro. Mark looked really cool.
And I've got a couple of little things I wanted to just talk about with Mark before we get into the rankings, if that's all right, Andrew. Is that cool?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah,
Point
so-
to that, Brett. I just want to, Greg, that the Robinson brothers wrote pretty much all the tracks on the album.
Yeah.
All of them except for the last one.
Any other? Yeah, Bob Marley's the last one, but all the rest of them are all Robinson brothers compositions.
Yeah. I mean, look, the thing was they were like a writing duo, so they were like the Jagger Richards sort of thing. Basically, on the first record, there was another guitarist called Jeff Cease, and he was quite good, but I think they ran their course with him as a guitar player, which I think he may have got fired from the band. I'm not 100% sure of
He
that.
ceased to be.
Yes. So Mark Ford was in a band called Burning Tree, who was an opener for the Black Crowes in '91, I believe. And the Black Crowes, they plucked him out for their own lead guitar duties because they could see that he would fit right in with what they were doing a lot more than just Jeff Cease did. As soon as he joined the Black Crowes, Mark Ford received a phone call from Slash from Guns N' Roses asking Ford to fill in for him for Izzy Stradlin, who'd quit the band during the Use Your Illusion tour. Ford explained to Slash that he just joined the Black Crowes. He declined the invitation. He said, of course, I was very flattered, and my life would have turned out a lot differently now. He said, I'd probably be dead, to be honest, with you. He obviously thinks that he probably would have made poor decisions with Guns N' Roses with his health because he had his own demons of addiction that he had to fight, and sobriety was something that he was looking and pulled himself out of the Crowes for a few times of touring. But that's something that, to be honest with you, Slash said to him, I think that's a good move because it's really cool, better fit for him, and realistically, he'll get more of a highlight in the Black Crowes than he would have with Guns N' Roses. Around that same time, I don't know if you knew this, Andrew, but Mark Ford played on Izzy Stradlin's, what song is it? Somebody's Knocking off his first solo record. Did you know that, Andrew?
The Juju Hounds.
Yeah. Did you know Mark Ford played on that song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you can tell straight away when you know it's him. You know, that's Mark Ford playing on that song.
Yep.
So yeah, he walked in, did a session right after Ron Wood finished doing a cover with Izzy. Take a look at the guy. He's uncredited on the album, but I think he said that he just walked in, picked up a telly, and started playing. So that just fit right in by the sounds of it. I think one of the things about Mark Ford was his retro prowess coming through on Southern Harmony album. The album was recorded in roughly 8 days. And just basically what he said about it in a comment was, it's just an instinct. I just kind of hear the song, what it's doing and what it needs, what it's missing. Does there need to be another point of view? Does the guitar need to just come up alongside the guy singing and go, hell yeah, what he said? I don't know in musical terms because I never taught properly. So I see in color and visuals, that's how I hear music. And, his playing was very influenced by, obviously, Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Clapton, all these guys. So falls in with what we're talking about here. That's all I want to say, guys. Just so, because Mark Ford's a very important part of this record. He's probably one of the key parts of this record being so good for me.
Absolutely.
Definitely a key ingredient. So hopefully I didn't take up too much time there, guys. Sorry about that.
That's cool. That's fine. Yeah.
Not at all.
How could you?
No, we appreciate that, and like we say too, folks, please give us your rankings in the tracks as well. Let us know what you think. It's a safe place to share your scores and your ranks. I'm going to kick it off with obviously the first song is "Sting Me," and I'm going to incorporate on a couple of the songs the videos because Brad already mentioned Remedy. That was released before the album came out, and that video was all over the place here in New Zealand, and that's the first time that we got to see this band, and this little boy here got to see this band, this incarnation of the band, and you kind of knew Brad that you were going to get something good. You knew you weren't going to get ripped off. But you know, this opening track, it's a classic Open G track. Please go and check out. There's a couple of videos on YouTube where Rich talks about writing this track and how he plays it. It's fantastic. It's well worth listening to him talk about than us. Brad, I love the way that the drums come into this track, and then obviously the keys build on it. It's just fantastic, that layering, and this is a big theme on this album, that soundscape layering. And so you get it in the first couple of moments of this track. It kicks off, but the really, really cool thing, besides the cool melody, Brad and Simon, and it was a shock. It was a shock to hear it on the album, but it wasn't like it didn't fit there. It was like it was meant to be, and it was one of the ingredients that we never got on the first album. The woman's vocals coming in, backing up right from the word go. It's like, oh my gosh, this is great, you know. I love that, and I still do. And when I listen to it again, it's like, this is going back to the 70s, you know, and the Rock Professor's already mentioned it. It's like it's locked in time. It's stealing light, borrowing light from another era. I won't say a lot about it because I know that we've got the Rock Professor and the Brad talking about a lot of these tracks too, so I've got to leave a bit of space for them. 10 out of 10. Cracker of a track. Cracker opener. I've bought the album, Brad. It's not going back. Rock Professor.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Follow that. You're right. I mean, as Brad was asking me earlier, you know, this is one of the tracks that, you know, you go, oh, look, that intro is very Faces, you know, it's very Faces kind of rock and roll intro. I think, Andrew, that the other thing it reminds me of, though, with the backing singers, and I think that in lots of the tracks, there's almost co-singing, isn't there? It's almost co-lead singing that with Chris Robinson. I think that gospel element that Ellen talks about a lot, and so I'm stealing your word, Ellen, because that's definitely what it is. That Southern gospel thing. Introduction to it remind me of a later version of Humble Pie. I had a Humble Pie live album, and it had a lot of backing singing on it and stuff. And there's one more cup of black coffee. Is it? Reminded me somewhat of that as well. That kind of, but introducing that into this. Which is fantastic, and I think they're all the way through. The backing singers definitely are. You know, they make up such a important constituent of this record. You know, besides the kind of Faces influences and things. The other thing I'll make a shout out to is the first album with keyboards on it, and I think again that kind of organ. You know, it's a hark back sound, isn't it? It's definitely organ and keys are not keyboards. You know, it's not synths. No. You know, which is hinking back, harking back to that early 70s thing, which is definitely, you know, definitely great. And that kind of integration of the, you know, that they give it a kind of a sort of harmonic interest that, you know, above the two guitars, and mixing them all together as you know, two guitars and the keys makes it full, rich, thick sounding. You know, and I think that I'll say it here, you know, in recording terms, it definitely wasn't made in 1970, was it? I mean, you know, it's definitely a 1990s recording in terms of the way that it sounds. Although the influences are definitely from the early 70s, as we said. So I mean, I think it sounds fantastic. I think that we should say, you know, when the solo comes in at 3 minutes, you know, definitely a man with his foot on the monitor giving it some, isn't it? And you know, that's tremendous. I think that there's a bit of wah-wah guitar on it as well. You know, there's a lot going on in this track. They're, as I say, texturally rich and really interesting. And I'll just I'm going to make my first shout out to Steve Gorman on the drums. What a great drummer he is. You know, I mean, I was amazed at the job he did on this. If you don't know this is the Black Crowes with Jimmy Page. He does a fantastic job on those Led Zeppelin songs. Just brilliant, and you know, no wonder. I make a shout out particularly to him on this, on all of these tracks, because he understands. He's got that groove, he's got that swing. He doesn't. I don't know whether they're recording to. I presume they're not, well, I don't know whether they're recording to click tracks or anything like that, but he can play around them and stuff and make it swing. And always a pleasure to have that starting off and through your tracks. I think it's fantastic. I too gave this a 10 out of 10. Never a skip. A great opener to an album, and exactly what you want. Really makes a statement, doesn't it, of what the sound is going to be, what type of album you're going to get, and what the band sounds like. Brad.
Wow, awesome. Well, first thing I want to say is shout outs to the producer, George Drakiolis. I don't know if I pronounced that properly, the Greek surname, but what an amazing production job. I absolutely love the sound of this record, and that guitar track when it comes in, that Rich's guitar tone is just absolutely it's his name's Rich, but the tone is rich, and the song name is called Sting Me, and the guitar tone is stinging. It's just like cutting through. It's thick, it's drenched, it's everything I love about like that sort of guitar tone, that era, that sound. Sounds incredible. I love the hand clapping at the start. Love that. Love the organ. You've mentioned that. I'm not going to try and repeat everything you've said. Great drumming from Steve. I mentioned that here. Chris's vocals are incredible, and great lyrics. The lyrics hint at themes of desire and longing. A very catchy hook, melody, and chorus line. It's a real stadium rocker. It really is. The female vocals give it that call and response thing through the verses, and the choruses sound incredible. Give it that soul sort of sound that the band were longing for. I think it's maybe step away from more of that rock thing and be more of a soulful bluesy rock band. Fantastic guitar solo from Mark Ford. The solo to me sounds like he's leaning on like some influences of his own, but like his good friend Craig Ross. I'm hearing Craig Ross from Lenny Kravitz's band. I'm hearing Clapton. I'm hearing even Slash from Guns N' Roses in this guitar solo. It's all there, and we know their influences are all the guys we love anyway. It's an absolutely rocking track for the opening song. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Absolutely rocking opening track for the album, and it's recorded so well. Definitely a 10 out of 10, never a skip from me. Andrew.
Well done, Rock Professor. Well done, Brad. And we've got some scores coming in. Alan's given it a 10 out of 10, so fantastic. Yeah, it's recorded well. The band are included as the production team as well. So, but clearly we know, as Brad said, on their second album, they wouldn't have a lot to offer, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. They would have been certainly learning a lot from George, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I read somewhere recently, Brad, that from a production point of view, when it becomes an artist involved in it, they're more about where they want it to go stylistically and where the influences come from. So if that's true with this band, you can see then from a production point of view, the Robertsons got what they wanted. Clearly yes. On this album. Look, folks, we've mentioned this before already, the single that came out, the video, and we've got some stills to show from the video because it was an awesome video. It was ahead of its time in the retro look. And I think it won a lot of fans, Brad and Simon, when it first came out. I think it won a lot of people. And it must have, when you consider how well it charted. It was a #1 album in the States. So, to become a #1 album, it's doing something pretty well. Again, Brad, you've got a classic open G riff. But what's really interesting about Rich Robertson, when he plays this, he always plays it with a capo on the 3rd fret. And he doesn't play with a 5-string open G that a lot of guys do. He keeps that bottom E on and tunes it down a bit. Go and check out again other guys offering interpretations of the song, playing it without a capo in 5-string open G, and it sounds sonically pretty good. But Rich is the man. Rich is doing it with 6 strings, Brad, and he ain't going to take that capo off the 3rd fret. So I think, I kind of know why he's doing that, because he's Rich Robertson. He wants to do it his way. You guys have already mentioned the Faces influence. You know, Steve Marriott is certainly a guitar player that provides a lot of that foundation on this album too. I'm hearing bits of him on this album, and I hear it on this track. The intro is just super cool video. I won't swear. The fiery solo is just fantastic. I can't, it's a short solo, Brad, compared to some of the other solos on the album, but short is sometimes sweet, so they say, or sweeter. Keeping it a family show. Guess my score, Brad.
100.
It's a Brad score. It's the first Brad score. I just think this this album just encompasses just the whole vibe of the album and what the band wanted to do. It's a remarkable song. I love it. Rock Professor, Brad score.
Brad score. Oh, well, Remedy's the first single off the album as well, so we should make note of that. So lead single off it. So, I just Rich Robertson said that Remedy's a song that is essentially about freedom. We were into the whole idea that the war on drugs was just silly. It was this asinine concept to me and millions of other people. So that song to me is about freedom, plain and simple. Just put in a rock and roll framework. Apparently the pro-marijuana stance the band espouses in this song is something they played up to around this time. It's the other band, particularly this track, but others as well, with the slide guitar on it. The other band that came to mind to listen to this was Little Feat. Early Little Feat with the great Lowell George, and we need to do some Little Feat on this thing, because one of the greats, Lowell George, and it that kind of groove that they set up is has elements to me of Little Feat in it, which is interesting. But this has got piano on it, great, and again that piano slide guitar thing, classic Little Feat, the Faces. So I think. And in the chorus, where the backing vocals take the leads, and then Chris answers, and we've got that chorus. That's really good, fantastically arranged, and great groove, as you said, Andrew. That great bluesy rock and roll solo that he does at 3:18. Keeping it tight, keeping it short, and then that drop down to electric piano, and that slightly more. It's one of the things that you can tell it's a 90s thing. That much more dancey drum rhythm, it's not a straight 4/4 thing. It's got that particularly 90s drum beat to it. And you've got that big string slide at the end, just and some feedback as well. I presume they're kind of playing in the studio quite a lot. If they've recorded in 8 days, they've cracked on with it. So a lot of recording live in the studio. I think you could tell that that interacts between the musicians. Fantastic. I give it 10 out of 10. Never a skip. Absolutely great track. Brad.
Beautiful. Well, Remedy, I mean, it's all the powers in the intro, and it continues throughout the whole song, even where it breaks down. Great guitar playing by Rich and Mark Ford in this song. It's a very infectious riff. The drums and bass, they're so tight and punchy. I mean, I don't want to keep repeating that, but they're Steve is the drummer and Johnny on bass. They're very tight this whole album, and they keep it really together. You mentioned Rock Professor. This album was probably recorded, in the studio live, and I got that sense of at least the Rich. The one guitar, bass, and drums would have at least done the beds to this song, I reckon, 100%. Together, playing live in the studio. I'm hearing the Rolling Stones, I'm hearing the Faces, and I'm hearing Led Zeppelin in this song. I know Zeppelin was an influence for them as well. Chris, his vocal is outstanding. The piano adds like a fun element to the song. I put the girls, their backing vocals add that gospel feel that they love so much. And that would have been really heavily pushed by Chris Robinson, I'm sure, because he loved all that gospel stuff. The lyrics themselves touch on redemption and self-discovery and like what you said as well, Simon. Mark Ford's guitar solo on this just fits perfectly for the song. He's not pushing out, trying to do anything new. He's just playing for the song. He truly is the perfect guitar player for this band. It's next level, his solo anyway. I love the organ through that middle section, the electric piano there sounds fantastic. And one of the best songs of the 90s, without a doubt. Have to give it 100 out of 10. Never a skip. Andrew.
Hooray. Good work.
Well done, and I especially love hearing your thoughts on the song, Brad, knowing that you're such a big fan of the band, but also interested and intrigued to hear what the Rock Professor has to say, knowing, again, I'm sorry for repeating this, where the influences of this band are coming from. So to hear him here and make those connections, I think just proves how successful this album was in '92, and probably continues and will continue to be, because it's one of those albums, again, as it gets a little bit on and on, where they sort of become more of who they are while digging deeper into their influences, if that makes any sense. Brad, you mentioned something about, Mark becoming a key component in this band. For me, Thorn in My Side is the song that he clearly illustrates that for me, bro. The song, this song. Okay, sorry, we're on the money. This song shouldn't be on this album for this band. This band, this is only their second album or their first album, depending on how you want to listen to it. This band is beyond, 20-somethings. It's a remarkable song. The intro, we've talked about layers on the first opening song. But the intro on this song, Brad and Simon, you've got the acoustic guitar, then you've got the keys coming in, and then the congas, and then you've got, I'm assuming it's Mark Ford with that crunchy guitar. And, the Rock Professor mentions this before on a lot of things that we've done. You don't have to go overboard. You mentioned it in your intro, talking about Mark, how Mark said, I'm only giving what the song needs. The first 30 seconds of the song, it's just remarkable.
Sums it up. Yep.
So again, I'm not going to bullshit you. When I listened to this the first time, I had to listen to this 3 or 4 times on repeat, because I forgot how great this song is. Because it's familiar. Lots of elements going on in this song, Simon. Lots of elements going on, and I'll be intrigued to listen to what you guys have to say about it. It's a sophisticated song for young guys. It's like, hey, where are you getting this shit from? Wow. It was a favourite song of mine when we first heard the album, and a couple of friends that I had at the time, Simon and Brad. It was just unusual because it was normally the rockers. So when you're drinking your first couple of cans, Brad, cold cans on the first 2 tracks, and you sit down and you light the ciggy for the third one, it's like, wow. Wow.
Are you talking wacky tobacco, or are you talking?
No, we're talking
jazz cigarettes.
Normal, but back in the bad days when we used to smoke. Yeah.
A long time ago.
I didn't want to give it a Brad score, but I have to. This song is just too good for these young guys. It's too good for them. Rock Professor.
Too good for them. Well, I think it's a product of listening. If you're that lucky and you've got all that back catalogue of all those bands that you really love to go and listen to, those influences come through clearly in this
Sure.
record. But the beauty of it is that, and remember those, that all those, the Faces and Zeppelin and stuff like that. These were guys in their 20s. They weren't guys in their 40s. All that stuff is done by, how old is Robert Plant when Led Zeppelin first album came out? 19 or something, and Jimmy Page is 20 or something. These guys, they're as young like this, and they managed to conjure it up. So if you've got all those influences that you can channel and filter and into your own music, I can see why they'd come up with a song as sophisticated as this in terms of its sound. Quite young, I think. It's one of the things about pop music is how sophisticated. Let's go and look at Bob Dylan. He's in his early 20s and writing. I know Chimes of Freedom, Mr. Tambourine Man, Like a Rolling Stone. He's not 45 writing them. He's 22, 23. Extraordinary. So I think that that's the way I think about it in those terms. That if and they've got all that stuff to draw on, and this track is about that, isn't it? It's the so the first two tracks are quite similar sonically. Definitely that driving rock sound and electric guitars. As you've said, Andrew, this branches out more into the acoustic thing. Acoustic and electric together, which I think is quite, that kind of textural difference, bit of wah wah guitar in it as well. You've got a solo where the two guitars intertwine together, kind of more than they've done on the first two tracks. You've got a piano later on, and some quite sort of loose scat singing on the back. Again, the backing singers, very important, adding that depth, gospel influence, but the texture as well is really important. And so I gave this 9 out of 10, but never a skip. As I say, showing you what the album is going to be. It's not just a straightforward, Faces rock album. It's going to be something else. Andrew, sorry, Brad. Going backwards.
Well, you've had your face knocked off with the first two tracks, and in true retro fashion, the third song usually is a bit of a mellower track or a little changing gear, so that it doesn't all sound the same. And I absolutely adore this track. I love that acoustic intro. It's just it's like a breath of fresh air. We've been smacked in the face pretty hard by the first two crackers, and this one following there, just coming in like a breath of fresh air, a little bit laid back. Love that organ feel, beautiful drum feel there, very laid back. And I get goosebumps when Chris whispers that part in the song and goes shh, then that bass line and the drums. Very delicate, it's I'm going to say this from a musician standpoint, it's very easy to play a belter of a song. It's very hard to play a delicate song and make it sound this good. That is, I'm sure most professional musicians will, own up to that. And if they don't, they're lying. I mean, Metallica, they write, Nothing Else Matters, and they always say that song's difficult to play compared to some of their more difficult riffs, because it's easy to go bam and just go for it, but then playing something a little bit more laid back gives it requires a little bit more musicianship, in my opinion.
And also, Brad, I'd say that very much that harks back to those late 60s, early 70s albums where you had all those contrasting. You'd have a slow track, you'd have an acoustic track, you'd have whereas I think you move forward to the 90s and it starts to become quite homogenous, don't you? Make an album with the sound, with this, and that's what the album sounds like. And I think there's a certain amount of harking back to that, which is no bad thing. Sorry
No,
for interruption.
I agree totally, Simon, and I appreciate that. I love the diversity of this album. I love how diverse, and I've got to say, beautiful singing from Chris Robinson here. Again, I'm hearing a lot of Stones influence. Wonderful guitar solo from Mark Ford. The piano adds a real earthy feel to the song, and the outro sounds massive. I have to agree with you, Andrew. It's 100 out of 10. The start of the song cements Mark Ford in the band, in my opinion. You know, he's a massive part of and key element to this, and I'm glad you brought that point up there, Andrew.
No problem. Thank you. And, you know, Rock Professor and everybody else that's in the show offering their comments and scores, thank you. So, Greg, what did these Jehovah's Witness girls do to you? Did they convert you, or did you rebel against the two Jehovah's Witness girls? I'm intrigued. Did you discover
he was busy playing his trombone
with Jehovah's Witness girls?
Just like a Salvation Army band thing, I think.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with playing the trombone.
Trombone.
Nothing wrong with that. You know, look at who was, you know, look at all the great trombone players that have played in rock and roll bands over the years. Anyway,
Ed Banyan. Yeah. They are. That's my only trombone player that I know. Is it Ed Banyan?
I was going to say the Stones, but they were a trumpet and a sax player, so.
I'm sure they were.
But the music teacher noticed I was getting out of practice.
Okay, out of practice and intervened. Great. Okay. For the worst.
So okay, I know what he wanted to do. So he wanted to go and influence the Jehovah's Witness girls. Okay, all right, got it. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Next track is Bad Luck. Black Eyes Goodbye.
Blue Eyes.
Blue Eyes Goodbye. I can't read my own writing. It reminds me a little bit of the intro when John Bonham. So what do they say? B&B with a little weed.
Yeah.
What does John Bonham say when he plays Moby Dick? John. What?
Moby Dick. Are you talking about the ocean?
Studio version.
The ocean. Yeah.
Ocean. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What? We're steady and 1, 2, 3. That is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of reminded me a little bit about that. You know, that these guys having a little bit of fun. I'm going to steal a little bit, but I wrote these notes here, but I have to steal them because I know that my co-hosts are going to talk about the influences. You know, when I first heard this, I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, because Stevie Ray Vaughan had been a big influence in my life, you know, for at least 10 years up until 92. So, Brad, I'm hearing Stevie Ray Vaughan in this, hearing a bit of Clapton, you know, there's a Clapton vibe going on there. And then you get this... I won't swear. You get this incredible vocal performance by Chris on this. Again, another sophisticated song. I'll let you guys talk a little bit about it. I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10. It's never a skip, Brad and Simon. But I could understand why you guys might give it a 10 out of 10 because of the intro. But, I'm going to give it solid 8.5. Rock Professor.
Well, John Bonham's intro to The Ocean is, we've done 4 already, and now we're steady.
We're steady.
1,
That's it.
2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
I
B&B with a little weed.
That's exactly it, yeah. It's yes, we're Mr. Woman's going to mispronounce all the song titles. The previous one's "Thorn in My Pride," not "Thorn in My Side," which is an entirely different song.
I can't read my own writing. Give me a break.
What, from a small ribbing? No, it's not happening. Oh dear. Well, yes, it's. I think this is the one that I just wrote down at the beginning. Oh yes, he sings very like Rod Stewart, doesn't he? It's very Rod Stewart singing on this. A bit more like Rod as maybe a solo performer rather than the Faces. But
yep,
that's kind of struck me. Electric piano, again, first appearance of the electric piano, and you've got the two electrics, one driven and one not so much. Great gospel feel for the backing singers again. Big bluesy solo, sounding solo, great stuff. I'll say one thing that struck me, having listened to it several times, is I think Chris Robinson should knock off the screaming. I know. I can only say it as I see it. I just like. I don't know. It just struck me as a bit unconvincing, really, in a funny kind of way. I'm not quite sure why, but it just didn't quite strike me as being. You just leave it, mate.
He's gone. He ain't coming back. We don't want to hear the score. Oh, he's ringing me. He's ringing me. Yes. If I don't, you'll what? Okay.
Sorry, it's just too irresistible to do not to do. But so I think I'd just go. But sorry, that's what I'd say about it. I couldn't quite get myself past the screen. But
easy,
great solo.
Easy.
What? Okay. Also, a great lesson in how to mix two guitars with similar sounds together, one on the left, one on the right. Really good. Really like that. Really struck me as part of this song. I too get in an 8.5 out of 10 and never a skip. You docked half a point for the scream. Brad.
Geez, I don't know. I'm gonna have to bring some credibility back to this channel, Andrew. The rock professors let us down. I thought, the screaming comment.
It's called singing.
Get your revenge in early.
Singing.
Brad. Go on. Really.
No.
Listen.
Look. Okay, Thorn in My Pride. This is sorry. Bad Luck Blue Eyes are up to. Sorry, my bad. I've got sidetracked there for a second with the screaming comment. I love the laid back feel of this track is fantastic. I think this song is positioned perfectly on the album as well, in continuity of the first three tracks. Again, some beautiful guitar playing from Mark Ford on the intro. Sounds like a Strat to me. I'm hearing the Stevie Ray Vaughan influence there, Andrew, like you said. I've put here the credibility part. Great vocals from Chris and the screaming rocks.
And you are, of course, right. Bow to your superior knowledge.
No, I just added the screaming part there. But I put backing vocals from the girls are fantastic. They add that soul sort of singing element to the track. At 3 minutes 14, that solo part there is beautiful. The outro playing is sensational. I gave this song a strong 10 out of 10. Never a skip for me.
Oh.
Was it because the guitars? Is it the guitars that pushed it up?
Well, you look, to be honest with you, the album excels because of Mark Ford. I said he's a key signature part of this record for me, and yes, 100%. Because I'm a big Strat Stevie Ray Vaughan nut, and I could hear that influence there. Like I said, I felt like I should have been playing guitar in this band.
Yeah.
There's a chance, but still a chance.
Not saying I could do better than Mark Ford because I couldn't, but I connect with it so much. That's why.
Fantastic. And I just want to pick up that point before we go on to the next folks track that Brad has mentioned for you. There is no doubt about it. There may be keys on this, and there may be some soul singing backing vocals going on here, and some other bits and pieces going on, but make no doubt about it, this is a guitar album, Rock Professor.
Okay, boss.
And a screamer.
Yeah, it is a guitar album. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes Salvation. Well, I have to give Steve Gorman a bit of credit here, folks, because the way that he snaps that snare on this track, Brad, and he hits those hi-hats on this number, it's just phenomenal. The Rock Professor's already mentioned this guy here a couple of times before previously, and we've got some pics. I think I may have one of him. I don't know, but if I don't, please forgive me, but go and check him out. He's heavily influenced as a drummer, and I've read some segments in his book by Charlie Watts, heavily influenced by Charlie Watts, and he just has a small drum set. We spoke about this when we went and ranked Shake Your Money Maker. In fact, we had a segment where we were talking a bit about him. So maybe I should link that somewhere. So, Brad, put your finger up, bro. Put your finger up, and it'll be over there somewhere if you want to go and check out that video. But he's heavily influenced, and we've spoken about the guitar players on this album, but it's probably a good time to talk about him. Heavily influenced by Charlie Watts. Doesn't need to have a huge drum kit. In fact, he was completely opposite to what a lot of the drummers were doing in the early 90s, Brad. You know, with huge kits. You know, he just had a single tom, a floor tom, a bass, a snare, and a couple of hi-hats and a couple of crashes. You know, that's it, Simon.
That's what you need. What do you need? You know, everything else just superfluous.
If you can't bang, yeah, it's just phenomenal, isn't it? That's just phenomenal. It just blows me away. And if in fact, when my co-hosts are talking, I'll make sure that I've got a pick, and if I haven't, I'll load it up when you guys are giving your scores, if that's okay, because big part of this sound is Steve Gorman, and for me, this is the track that he's obviously flying through. But then Brad, at that 2-minute 47 mark, you get that cool intro, that cool guitar solo.
Yes,
it's like, holy cow, what's going on here? Yeah. Folks, I've given this an 8.5 out of 10 too. It's that's not a bad score, because we like to joke, we like to have a bit of fun and all that with our rankings, but I've got to be clear with my rankings because I love this album. It's an 8.5, not quite a 9, Brad. I'll be interested to hear what Brad has to say in the Rock Professor, but it's never a skip. Rock Professor.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just pose a question to the team. Clearly, we talked a lot about the drums and the guitars and stuff, and stuff. But the bass playing, it's kind of unobtrusive to me. It works really well in conjunction with the drums. It didn't really stick out to me on this. Is that, if I missed the point? I feel like it. That's not a bad thing, by the way. I think nobody. Yes, well, you're the bass player in the band, so yeah, go on.
So I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's because I was going to mention it when you can noticeably hear the bass, but because you'll mention it now, it's, if there is one thing that is missing on this album, it's the Johnny Colt doesn't shine at all. But I think that's part of that early 90s production, Brad. I'll be interested to hear what Brad has to say about it. Later on, you can hear Johnny Colt playing, but I understand if you go and watch the live and you hear the band live, and Brad and I did in 1992, man, the bass was blowing the roof off.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
No, it did sort of struck me, and I sort of made a note of it really, and on this track, as we get to the end of what I'm calling side one, I think that it's kind of one of those things that, and not everyone can shine in a band all the time, that's not going to work, and as long as you're steady and holding it down, and giving the bass drum some melody, that's what the bass player should be doing, and does it fine. But it was unobtrusive, and that's unusual for me not to notice the bass playing really a bit. But I didn't particularly on most of this record. Really didn't make many notes about it. I agree with Andrew. I think that fantastic drumming on this. The right amount of just the right amount of swing and groove that really sets it in. Steady down, very steady all the way through. Not too much flash, but just. You just know when a drummer's just got that thing when they're just doing that 4/4, and you think, yes, it's relaxing into it. Not too much push. A great solo, as Andrew said, creamy guitar tone on the solo. Some big bends and stuff, and the outro, a kind of build thing with insistent drums and guitars. Giving it more intensity. Clearly, if we're getting towards the end of side one, that's a good thing. I get this 8 out of 10. Never a skip though, and good ending to side one. Brad.
All right. Well, for me, sometimes Salvation, it's that chromatic run into the intro is, it's like it was a shock the first time I heard it. And then stop. I was like, what? What's going on here? It was odd for me, but the more I listened to it, the more addictive it got. Like I needed to hear more. So I love that start-stop riff is what I'm getting at. It's quite addictive. The vocals on this are great. They're killer. Great lyrics. I've got to give it to Chris Robinson. He writes incredible lyrics. He's not just a great singer and at times it sounds like Rod Stewart or whatever, but he's a great lyricist. And, it explores themes of hope and redemption. The dual guitar work on this is really apparent on this song and presented really well. The solo from Mark Ford is got that fuzz. It's a really choked up smooth sound. It's creamy, thick, a beautiful fuzz tone he's got. The song, it's a hard progression to solo over as a guitar player. If you're listening to the background, what's going on behind the solo, it's not an easy thing to come up with something as progressive and as wonderful as what Mark Ford did on this song. I love the track. I always have. And I gave it a very strong 9 out of 10, never a skip. Andrew, I think that's halfway through, guys. I think
it is. That was the end of side one, technically.
Yes.
I know it's more of a CD album.
Just give me 2 seconds. I'll just load up a couple of pics of Coolman's drums.
I was just reading some of these comments and that. So John ZD351. I'm going to have to take you under my wing, mate, and get you to listen to the album a little bit differently. I know it's not exactly probably like the first record, but that's where I like how different it is to the first record, and it's a little bit more about true to probably what the band's about more than the record company pushing them to be a rock band. And this album cover, I mean, that promotional shot, that cemented my stage attire for my very first band. I wanted to dress like these guys.
They certainly had it.
Yeah. So
look at that, very faces.
You would think this band has come straight out of the late 60s or 70s. I think more the 70s, but it's got that real thing going on. The promotional, that's great, Andrew. That's great. There's at the 30th anniversary of it.
Yeah. So
that's such a late 60s poster, isn't it? That style.
Yeah, that's the the whole thing with those guys.
So there's some picks here that Brad's going to talk about. So that's a young Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, young Mark. I think that might have been in his first band, Screaming Trees, and that white Stratocaster there is it's look. There's debates online about which guitars he used on this record. This is one of them. It's a Strat Plus. If anyone's familiar with those '90s Strat Pluses in white with a maple neck, so it's beautiful sounding guitar, and so that's a great shot. I thought that was just pre him joining the Black Rose. I think Andrew and Simon.
Yeah, we know it's a Strat Plus because he's got the metal nut and
Yes.
lace sensors.
Yes, but that particular guitar, I know he joined the Black Rose with very limited gear. So,
Yep.
that's another live shot. You can see there, vintage fuzz face. He's got a wah pedal and a tube screamer. So that's pretty much, it's a very simple setup. That's a live setup. So that was when he was part of the Black Rose.
And the brilliant homemade board, Brad.
Oh, you
just
got
like
a
a piece of looks like a piece of hardboard, doesn't it? Just like these days with your Schmidt arrays and all of that stuff. This is just a bit of wood. Bang 3 things on it. Bingo.
That's right. So yeah, and that's a great photo actually, Andrew. That's a great photo.
It's a little bit later.
Yeah. That's the Screaming Trees, his first band, and he was fronting that, so he's in the middle there with a bit shorter hair. So I've listened to them; they're pretty cool, actually. But that's that Strat again, Johnny on the bass next to him. That's a live shot, obviously on this tour of this album. That would have been probably in the Screaming Trees, but that era of him just pre-joining the Black Rope, joining for this record. So I don't know what
the Ron Wood haircut.
Yes, I was going to suggest, the vest, the white shirts, and all that are very Ron Wood vibe. You know what I mean? They got that very Ronnie Wood sort of thing going on. That's Les Paul. Rich bought him from my research. I think Rich bought him that. It's a raw finished top, maple top, and I'm not sure if this guitar was on the record or not. It's featured on the album cover, so it's actually, but I'm not sure. It's debatable, but it is on the album cover. The liner notes, that particular guitar. So yeah, that guitar is a beautiful sounding guitar. But he was a Les Paul Strat dude, pretty much where I get my influence from, that Strat and the Les Paul thing. I think they work wonderfully well together. Some beautiful tones on this record from Mark, and we know what Rich uses. Rich uses the Jubilees, the Telecasters. He uses on this record would be heavily the Telecaster. Andrew, is that correct?
Yeah, like you say, it's pretty hard to get solid information on what they're actually playing. But that's what Rich is predominantly known for, playing the electric Spanish guitars. There's a gold top there. His Telecasters and his Telecaster Custom
with the humbuckers.
And I do think, and this is what I noticed here today, Andrew, is on the liner notes. I think there's a photo here of Mark Ford playing. It looks like it might be the gold top, Rich's gold top. So I'm suggesting the Les Paul that's on this record is actually Rich's Les Paul, maybe.
That one there.
So on the liner notes, I don't know if you can. I'll try and point it out. So if you've got the album, you can go and look at it. But it's that little picture there. I'm trying to go right on that picture, but can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I always thought it was that gold top.
Yeah, I think it's a gold top. So pretty predominantly
looks
think
like
that
it, doesn't it? Yeah.
This one here. So that there, I think, is the Les Paul he used. But he's definitely recording there. He's got the headphones on. So yeah. Anyway, I just thought that would be an interesting thing to. I only saw that just before we went live, Andrew.
Cool.
So I would have said the other way.
You would assume, don't you, that Rich Robinson plays the humbucker stuff and Mark plays the Stratty stuff.
Well, definitely Mark plays the Strat because I think that was his main guitar he walked in with. But he definitely plays the Les Paul on this record as well. There's definitely Les Paul on this record and Strat. Yeah, very cool. I remember that promo actually. Very cool. The Stone Crows, yeah.
The Stoned Crows, yes.
Give me a second, guys. So these are some stills from the video that we spoke about. Remedy, hugely influential.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, they all kind of looked like they were time warped from the 70s.
Yep.
Chris Robinson, put your shoes on, for God's sake.
That's his earthiness coming out. You know.
Yeah.
Rich,
so you can see it's
yeah.
You can see how it's capoed there at the third fret, open G.
Yeah.
So where's that? It's Brad's stub.
That's my actual ticket.
Your ticket, the actual ticket. Nice one.
Yeah, so that's the ticket I've saved it all these years inside the album cover. And it's a look, you can see there, Horden Pavilion, the date. It wasn't long after the album came out that they came through Australia and New Zealand. And they did a really quick tour, Andrew, from memory. They only played 2 gigs, I think, Sydney and Melbourne here in Australia, and they went to New Zealand. And I was shocked that they didn't do a full tour of Australia. They just
I think they did about four venues in Australia, and they did 4 here in New Zealand. But yeah, you're right, bro. It was a short venue. There's a couple of videos, folks, online too, if you want to go and check it out. So this guitar here that Rich is playing got destroyed and damaged, had to be rebuilt in Hurricane Katrina because the band had their warehouse in New Orleans, and all their guitars all floated to the top. Yes. So a lot of their guitars that they had were damaged, destroyed, and so I won't bore you with those details, but if you want to go and check that out where Rich talks about, losing a lot of those guitars, heart-wrenching. I'm going to isolate you, bro, because you're going to show that you got that ticket there, have you?
Yeah.
Yes, he has.
There it is there, folks.
No,
I don't have mine.
$35. 35 Australian dollars.
$40 for me.
£2.50.
I've been hanging on to this ticket stub in my album cover for that long. And I bought this shirt, like I said at the start of the show, at the gig.
Well done, bro. Awesome.
When he was 4 at the time.
Oh, so they played in Melbourne. Yeah.
They only played in Melbourne and Sydney, from memory, that tour.
Yeah, it was a short tour.
Yeah, on that tour. Yeah.
How big a venue is that, Brad? How many people?
Horden. Geez, I knew you'd ask me that. I didn't even really do my homework there, but a few thousand. Okay. But it's not a massive, but it's a good size studio.
Like 5,000 kind of thing.
Yeah. 3,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. That same thing here. They played at a place called the Top. At Mount Smart Stadium. It had about 5,000 people. It wasn't jam-packed. I've been into other gigs there. It was jam-packed, and they were super loud, Browd. Super loud.
I walked out of there. I couldn't hear for days. And all I remember as I walked in, I got there early. I did a John ZD351, gets to every gig and gets right up the front. I got right up the front in front of Chris. And, I had the great viewpoint of the singer and both guitar players. I was just watching, And all I remember from that gig is how powerful they opened with a song we're about to rank, No Speak, No Slave. And then they smashed into Twice as Hard. And all I remember, the crowd just went ballistic, and all I could smell throughout the whole crowd was weed. It was just, I got stoned from just standing there. But I wasn't smoking.
Yeah, you did not inhale.
I did. I had no choice. I had to inhale
choice,
the air around me, and I reckon I got stoned that night because there was so much weed smell in the venue. It was unbelievable.
Nice.
Yeah,
So,
same in Auckland, man. Yeah, it was weed. It was Weed City.
Bring
Let
out
me
the
say,
weeders.
when I walked out of the venue, I was like, "This is really groovy, man. Yeah, digs.
Cool, man. Nice. But the Horden Pavilion is 5,500 seater.
Okay. Yeah, 3 to 5. I thought.
Yeah. I'm always interested in what size venues people are playing and stuff, and what you can do. Fantastic.
All right, we'll kick off the rankings.
Yeah.
Side 2, hotel illness. What was the Stones song? Motel. The Stones did us on Sticky Fingers.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I'm going to look it up now because.
Thank you.
I'm going
I'm so lazy. I should have wrote these notes.
Should have blooming looked.
There we go. Sticky Fingers. Oh, that's not the Sticky Fingers I was wanting to look at.
Yeah, wrong one.
Oh dear.
Oops. Oopsie daisies. Hang on, I better get off this site before I get flagged.
Oh, interesting. So,
oh, jeez.
It's not on Sticky Fingers. It's not Brown Sugar Sway, Wild Horses, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, You've Got to Move, Bitch, I Got the Blues, Sister Morphine, Dead Flowers, and Moonlight Mile.
Moonlight. Okay, sorry.
Mile?
I'm Moonlight Mile. I'm certainly going somewhere different. But please let me get back to reality. Hotel illness. Brad and Simon, I mentioned to you guys before that this band finds itself by digging deeper into some of the classic influences. This is clearly one of the songs on this side where they're doing that. Hotel illness, in my mind, Brad, could easily fit into that whole mojo from Exile on Main Street. It's just, when I first heard this album and I heard this track, it's something that's just stuck with me. And if it's not true, it's my truth, and I'm going to stick with it. I love the harp. The harp is just such a treat, isn't it, when you get it on this side? There's a couple of other tracks where it comes into it. Rich plays it. No, sorry, Chris plays the harp. And then, on top of that, we get the resonator slide guitar coming through again. Those beautiful layers. Well done to the production team for doing that. Again, I've got to say this, Let It Bleed, Beggar's Banquet, it's got acoustic slide guitar all over it. The Rock Professor mentioned that, Mick Taylor's influence on playing slide. But again, we'll wait for another couple of tracks and we'll talk about Ronnie Wood and his slide contribution, because there's another track coming up where it's heavily influenced by Ronnie. Beautiful layers. Love the tambourine. Also, the guitars and the harp. 9 out of 10, Rock Professor. I just love the whole vibe of this track. If it's opening up side 2, because I never got this on vinyl, so I don't know. But if this is opening up side 2, it's wow.
Yeah. It's an interesting. If you're gonna, and I don't think it's programmed for vinyl. I think it's programmed for. Yes, thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
I think this is programmed for CD, and I think because I'm not sure that if you were programming 2 sides of vinyl, that you'd necessarily go with this as the opening track to side 2. Myself, it's an interesting choice if you're going for side 2. But I wonder if they did, or whether they actually programmed the 10 tracks, as a single entity thing, because clearly we're in the days of CDs much more than vinyl's on its way out. CDs, everyone's buying CDs now.
Yeah,
and so the programming for CDs, I think, probably took precedent over the programming for vinyl. I'll have a look at it when I'm not talking. I'll see if I can find a vinyl copy of it and see how it's divided. I presume it's divided up like this. So as you've said, Andrew, kind of sort of Stones vibe. It has a kind of country vibe to it as well, with that electric and acoustic thing going on, two things together. Introduction of the harmonica, first track with the harmonica on it. Definitely taking it somewhere else, giving it more of that bluesy harp vibe as well, that I think is not something we've had before in terms of its feel and what they're doing. Acoustic slide punctuates the second verse, and again the kind of country is solo. I felt, had some country licks in there and sort of and you've got your second solo, which is much more of a rock solo towards the end. There we are. Look at that. Is that your ticket, Andrew?
No, that's John ZD351.
John ZD351. Oh, nice.
He paid the same price too, $35. So no one got ripped off, unless they bought it off the off the scalpers.
Yeah. Yeah. John asked, so are you saying the running order should be thought of differently if you do not have a break to flip the disc? I think I do, John. Yeah, I think it's a different experience if you're not getting up halfway through and flipping it over as a thing. Yeah, I definitely do think that. I think this is as again, it's that kind of it's a different type of song. We've not had a song like this before on the album. Definitely opening up, different influences and different ways of looking at it. I go to say 8.5 out of 10, but never a skip. Brad, I'm just going to swap my.
Well, Hotel Illness. I love the intro guitar from Rich. Has like that tremolo effect happening. I love that sort of vibe that's going on there. Great harmonica I've put there. Again, Chris sings, fantastically. The lyrics tell a story of personal turmoil. Wonderful slide playing on this track. And sorry. Yeah, what are my notes here? Have just disappeared. Here we go. Wonderful song. Mark's solo is
It's
great.
Sticky Fingers website.
Yes, I know. I've just closed it. No, I'm joking. Solo is great. Rich Robinson's slide work is fantastic. The outro solo is fantastic. It's a catchy song and a very catchy riff. I gave it 9 out of 10, and it's never a skip for me.
Fantastic. We're on track there, folks. We're on to the next track, and I've got some questions here because I don't know the answers, and I didn't go looking for the answers because I thought maybe one of my co-hosts might know it. So it's always good to be surprised. Black Moon.
Creeping.
Yeah, not groping, creeping. Black Moon creeping. Creeping.
Black Moon groping. Yeah, hey, Andrew, get off that site too, man. I know you've been looking.
Yeah. Yes. Stop that now.
Look, folks, let's be clear. This song dovetails really, really nicely from the previous song. But then you get a couple of nice little shocks, Brad, coming through. Is that a wah that we've got in here, or is it a uni vibe, or is it a talk box coming through?
Talk
okay.
box.
Okay. So it's a talk box coming through, and it's like, wow, But so you can understand why I'm asking the question, folks, because I've listened to it for near on 30 years and never really sort of delved into finding the answer. So asking whether it's a vibe, uni, or a wah, or a talks box just goes to prove the point that this album's not overdone, Simon. Nothing is quite obvious as opposed to the lead guitar and the rhythm guitar. So some of these elements that we're hearing are just kind of there, Brad, and I like that. You got that classic solo that rips. And this is the track where you can finally, Rock Professor, hear the bass from Johnny. Finally hear some bass runs at 3 minutes and 30. And he plays pretty well on this track. Again, I'm interested, Brad, to hear what they have to do with the remasters and the re-release to see whether or not they punch it up a bit. I'll be intrigued to hear how that sonically sounds, because we've spoken about a lot of albums on this channel that could do with a little bit more bass coming through. This is an album that could probably do with a bit more. I'll be fair. I'll be fair. I'd like to hear that. 9 out of 10, Brad and Simon, for me. Lovely track, wonderful track, and thank you for clarifying that it's a talk box that I'm sure you'll be talking a little bit more about. Rock Professor.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. By the way, the original vinyl, Hotel Innes, is the first track on side 2. So it's the second track on side 2 as a thing. And yeah, it's it's interesting. This, isn't it? The side 2 is quite a lot different to side 1. Side 1 seems to be kind of, quite tightly focused and, and a real showcase of what the album is and stuff. Whereas the second side kind of spreads out more, and there's other things going on it, just showing their musical diversity and the diversity of the songs that they've written. It's I know, John, you're right. What a flipping inconvenience, but think of it in a good way. Reset your mind for side 2 in a way as CD doesn't. So Black Moon Creeping is kind of starts with slide and harp as well, so it's got that kind of slide harp thing going on, and then pretty heavy riff, isn't it? It's that comes in, and you've got the second guitar playing the riff with the slide an octave above, kind of thing, which is really cool. Pretty insistent 4/4 drums, and and you're right, Andrew. I made a note of the bass as well. Kind of oh, look, there's the bass. Is it the? It did strike me. Is this the Michael Anthony argument? Where is Michael Anthony on all these later Van Halen things? Where is Johnny Colt and all these things, on all these? He's in there somewhere. I like the fact I like the twin guitars. It's a talk box and driven guitars. One on the left, one on the right under the vocals. That's really good, and really good way. Really you get an idea about what to do with two guitars, don't you? It's it's two different sounds and what they're doing. The solo is twin guitars, I think. Or certainly maybe one guitar doubled or twins, whatever. And I don't know whether they're both playing it. Probably live they would be. And you've got an organ on it as well, which comes in later on, bit of texture. And then your 420, you've got that change of rhythm to that slower swinging beat that just with the piano that just finishes it off. Really, kind of takes the song somewhere else at the end. 8.5 out of 10 for me. Never a skip. Brad.
All right, so for me. You guys have touched on a lot of the stuff I've already touched on. I love this riff. That sludgy guitar tone that Rich has got on this is infectious. I love it. The playing is fantastic on this. The bass and the drums. I really enjoyed that. I'll put here the bass. Really stands out on this track as well. I'll put. The first time I've heard Talkbox on the record from Mark Ford, it gives it more of a early Aerosmith vibe for me, more Joe Perry on guitar.
Good point.
I wanted to bring that up because I think Joe Perry is a bit of an influence there for sure, I'd say. Another great catchy melody throughout the verses and choruses, some fantastic background vocals again from the girls. This is one of my favorite Mark Ford guitar solos on the record. I can hear, again, like I mentioned before, one of his close friends is Craig Ross from Lenny Kravitz's band, and I can hear Craig Ross all over this guitar solo. Craig Ross is one of my favorite players as well. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful solo, perfectly fits the song. I love that outro, the halftime feel, like you mentioned there, Simon. Without sort of repeating everything you guys have already said, I gave this a 10 out of 10, and definitely never a skip.
Fantastic.
In my defence, remember, I'm scoring this off a few listens in 1 week, whereas you're scoring it off 30 years of listening to it. So I think
Look,
that's
unfortunately, I'm a bit biased, Simon and Andrew. on this.
no, it's fine.
It is, I'm very
should-
close to this record. Very close to it. So.
It's definitely not an unconscious bias, though, is it? It's definitely a conscious bias.
John ZD
Andrew.
351's on fire in the chat, folks. Go and check out these awesome comments.
Get your money down.
Okay, folks, we're up to Speak No Slave.
Wow.
Wow. You know, again, I'm going to steal a little bit of what the Rock Professor said just to prove that I do listen to what my co-hosts are saying. You know, the Rock Professor said side 2 is definitely a contrast with the introduction of different elements and different musical instruments. You get the maracas now, Simon, on this track coming through, and it bounces off, the maracas bounce off the snare. Again, I hate to repeat it, but I got to call it, biggest banquet. We've got that same kind of vibe going through, and we saw it right through with Santana as well, and just the way that the maracas and it just adds that little element. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I love it. And then you've mentioned before earlier, and Brad was talking a little bit about it, about the guitar weaving and not being obvious on a lot of tracks, which is a great point to make. You saw this being more in the vein of Mick Taylor, which is exactly how I see it. But on this track, you get a lot of guitar weaving, And again, I'll be very keen and interested to hear what you and Brad have to say, because I've been listening to it for 30 years too, and this is the track for me where I hear the weaving between the two guitar players, and I think that's fantastic. I love the solo, and I'm sure Brad will have a lot more to talk about the solo on this. Now, I've got to be clear when I'm giving this rank. It's not in any way taken away from the greatness of the song, but I'm going to keep it in contrast with other tracks on here. I'm giving this a solid 8 out of 10, Brad and Simon. It's never a skip. Rock Professor.
No, agree. Yeah. The riff at the beginning, I can't get it out of my head. Is it sounds like "Down Down" by Status Quo. Got that? I don't know why I think it's like that. I mean, it just got a it's like, oh look, it's "Down Down" by Status Quo. It's a different drug. Apparently, Rick Parfitt stayed up. He got that riff in the studio late at night, and he stayed there all night and waited for them to come back in the studio so that he could record it, so he wouldn't forget it. Which is funny, but yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. It's the drums, fantastic drums, that mid-tempo swing, as we said, and also a bass. Hello, bass player. Hello, Johnny. So that's pretty cool, and that rising riff, that's very memorable. And as you said, Andrew, that twin guitar. And the thing I made a note of that I think just is worth, I haven't said it before now, but it's worth saying, that it is very Stones-like, but to me, it's very modern Stones-like. Yeah. More the sound, it's a bit like, the new Stone single from Hackney Diamonds. It's got that kind of, yes, it's not quite the same sound. It's much more kind of modern produced sound, bit rockier and things. And that's what it reminded me of. I mean, that it's modern Stones, not Exile on Main Street Stones in terms of its sound, in terms of what he plays. Keith plays what he plays, and but yeah, that was my feeling about it, was that it had that modern Stones sound, not the Exile on Main Street sound. I presume it's a wah-wah solo. I went with wah-wah solo. It's a pretty cool wah-wah solo, and that insistent drumming to finish. again, a kind of build up and tempo. 8 out of 10 from me. Never a skip. Brad.
Oh, we're on the money.
Wow.
Alan's 9 out of 10.
I was hoping that you might be able to redeem Andrew's score a bit there, Simon, but you still are on the money. So I think my biased opinion might come out here a little bit. This is see, the show's all about me now, guys. Now you got me. No Speak, No Slave. This is an absolute ball-tearing song. I love the build-up to the intro. The guitar sounds are fantastic. I love that riff. Rich's guitar is just wow. Mark, come back, guys. Come back. Come back. I don't like being isolated. Hey, Andrew, don't isolate me.
That was a very big finger, that wasn't it? It was really big.
Yeah, we know where that goes.
Biggie fingers, yeah. All right. Anyway,
all right. Let's
keep it clean. All right. So I've totally lost train of thought now. Okay, Mark Ford comes in. The bass and drums sound massive on this, and how good is Steve's drumming on this track? I know you said status quo, Simon. I don't hear that personally.
No,
I'm hearing Led Zeppelin. I'm hearing Stones, and I'm even hearing some Guns N' Roses here. Great lyrics and vocals from Chris. I love the background vocals. The solo from Mark Ford is drenched in fuzz. I love the guitar solo. The wah pedal towards the later part of the solo gives me goosebumps. And that rhythm guitar track by Rich underneath is phenomenal underneath the solo. Got to give credit to Rich Robinson when we can. And, I mean, he's a phenomenal guitar player with all these open tunings. That solo wouldn't sound half as good without that rhythm behind it, what Rich is doing there. It's unbelievable. This is a belting song. They used to open with this song. When I saw the gig in 92, they opened with this. There's an immense power, something quite special about this track, and that double time outro with the wah pedal. Look, because the whole song, guitar playing, everything, I have to give it 100 out of 10. It's never a skip for me. And without sort of banging on about the guitars again, if you're not familiar with who's playing what parts, for the majority of the record, if you pan hard left, it's Rich. If you pan hard right, it's Mark Ford on the rhythm guitars. So very much like the old days of Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses, they always used to do that, like, one guitarist one side, one the other. So, but that's a hard pan. It's not like blended at 45 or anything. It's like a hard pan. Yeah. That sort of wide sound. Very Stones, very Zeppelin. 100 out of 10. Yes.
Awesome. I forgot to show pics of the drummer. So that's a recent pic of Steve. But again, look, he hasn't got his set bigger over time, Simon. This is from 2015. There he is there with just a snare and a floor tom. That's Rich Robertson. No, that's Gorman. All these names in my head. Sorry, it's a late day. And here he is here. So this is from 2015. So he's got an extra floor tom.
Oh, extra floor tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's branching out, Simon.
Yeah, jazz drummer. Or actually, that's not a prog rock drummer. Actually, yeah. Next to we're getting a gong, then we're all in trouble.
There's Brad there, and there he is there just with one single floor.
Yeah,
that's the album there. That's him in this picture. This one.
Yeah.
And also, where is he? Where is he? Can't see. I'm doing this backwards. Anyway,
without looking. Yes. I think you've got to fold it out some more, Brad. I think you've got to fold it out some more.
No,
yeah, you've got.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's it. Yeah. No,
I don't know.
A bit more.
It doesn't matter.
But yes, from the Max Weinberg school of drum kits.
Yep.
and various others. But I always think of Max Weinberg in that small.
And that's him there on the album cover.
Yeah.
You did show pictures of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, key element to this band, that, and again, if I was a drummer, if I was the parent of a drummer, I'd be saying to my sonny boy or Sarah girl, you don't need a big drum set. You just, if you can't play that, nothing else is going to work.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, a gong is not going to help you.
No. Unless you're John Bonham.
Yeah. But, in fairness, for the most part, he still had quite a small drum kit, didn't he? Didn't have a huge drum kit.
Well, that's right.
JB.
Yeah. He only had a small kit too, and relatively speaking, didn't change much over time.
Just big sizes.
You got it, Brad. My morning song is the next track, and the rock professor mentioned that we had some bass on the previous track. You get some bass too, folks. You get some bass on this track. Yeah. Love hearing the bass, and we hear it. Wow. You guys might remember I mentioned the slide track on a couple of tracks in. This is where, in my opinion, and I'll be, again, keen to hear what Brad and the rock professor have to say, but this is where the Ronnie Wood of slide style guitar comes through for me on this track. And go and check it. If you don't believe me, go and check out Ronnie Wood's album Slide On it, and you'll be amazed. And we've obviously over the years seen Ronnie slide his guitar for the Stones for a long time, haven't we, Brad? So again, the Faces influence. Brad has mentioned that last week when we were talking about it. The Faces, and when we talk about the Faces, about Ronnie Wood, Marriott, and Rod Stewart, heavily involved on this album. As far as an influence goes. One of the longest tracks on the album, Brad, at 6:15. There's a couple of tracks doing 6 minutes on this album. And again, it's one of those albums where you look and go, holy cow, this is 6 minutes, but it doesn't sound like a 6 minute song. They're not, it's just one of those remarkable things. And again, I didn't work that out until a couple of days ago when I was actually just looking at the set list on Spotify. Isn't Chris an incredible lyricist?
Yeah.
Go and check out the words on this song. He's just an we got glimpses of it, didn't we, with Jealous Again on their first album. But again, I'm going to reiterate a point that the rock professor said, that these guys aren't 40 or 50 or 60 with 20 years or 30 or 50 years worth of lived experience, Brad. These guys are in their early 20s writing this shit.
Unbelievable.
I know where it comes. Rich Robertson and Chris Robertson's, family are hugely musical. Their dad was a bluegrass guitarist, so they've been playing and listening to this kind of music and talking about and playing and hearing music, talking about people and events for generations, Brad. So it's kind of, can we say it? Is it part of their DNA?
We can. Yeah.
Yes.
Good point.
To write these stories. So again, I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say. Just an incredible songwriter. And because of that, I'm giving this track 10 out of 10. I just think it's just phenomenal from a songwriting point of view. This skinny guy jumping up and down, shouting and screaming.
Docked half a point for the screaming.
Can write some good songs. Rock professor.
It's my tagline for this album, docked half a point for screaming. Yeah. I mean, Chris Robertson said, this is about being intoxicated for great lengths of time. I'm not condoning it unless you're really good at it. Well, clearly he's really good at it. So it's a pretty cool quote. I think it's for me, that beginning of it, shades of Led Zeppelin for me. This, Brad, I'm picking up on your Led Zeppelin thing. I think that kind of heavy, the drums, fantastic, and that slide riff that they play at the beginning is just amongst other people. And I agree with you about, it's just late 60s, early 70s British rock bands with slide, isn't it? Take your pick, and they all come from the same well, basically, if you're Ronnie Wood, Jimmy Page, it's all coming from the same place. So filtered through their own particular genius. But so I agree with you. I think this is one of the long songs. It has a lot going on. Again, punching bass. I've made a note of it. There's the bass. Wow. What's it about side 2? The bass player not there for side 1, but there for side 2.
He comes back.
More. Yeah.
Comes
I've
back
turned
from
up.
Smoko.
I'm back.
Well, they sacked him too. Maybe they sacked him during the first half of the album.
What, you mean so they recorded it backwards? They recorded side 2 first and then side 1 without him. Great theories we have, yes. So punch bass, keyboards as well. Got the organ that comes in. Great backing vocals in the chorus. They're right in there, and I think that it is a tribute to Chris Robinson's confidence as a singer that they allow so much. Backing vocals to be right on a par with what he's doing. He's singing with them. They're not just in the background, bit of ooh la la. They become features of the song, and in a really good way. Great solo, great soaring bluesy solo at 2:20, which continues. They continue playing under the singing, and continues after the singing as well in that bit. And then you've got that drop down. Just the bass drums and that arpeggio guitar, again, texture, contrast, dynamics we talk a lot about on here. It's very much part of what makes this track great. Great angelic backing vocals, and you've got that kind of lighter version as you get into the it's the same riff but it's lighter. There's less driven guitars, and then you've got the track that builds up, and at 5:05 you've got those really huge chords, and then you've got the backing singers singing at the same volume as Chris to the end, which is great. What do you mean still? Yeah, always, John, I think is the phrase.
I'm going to own that.
Yeah. I think that's almost a T-shirt, isn't it? You guys are old, still talks. Lovely. And what song is not improved by having quite a lot of feedback at the end? Would be my estimation of it. Yes, 9.5 out of 10. Second last song on the album, definitely one of the strongest. Disproving my theory once again.
You just took the words right out of my mouth, Simon.
Yep. Got to say it for myself.
Right,
Brad,
I was going
over to you.
You might have to time yourself out after this song, Simon, for your theory, is what I was saying. So.
Oh, definitely, yes.
My morning song. Look, I'm hearing Rolling Stones in this. I'm hearing Ron Wood, Keith Richards playing together more than any other track on this record. Great vocal from Chris. Again, fantastic lyrics. Some wonderful slide playing. Bass and drums sound massive. Love the solo. Mark Ford is blistering. Plays perfectly for the change of the feel of the song. Love the breakdown section. The bass sounds fantastic there. Again, the guitar duo on this song is a highlight for me. I love how the song changes and has the female vocals underlying through what Chris is singing, and with the woo parts that they're doing. I love that. 4 minutes, some wonderful dissonant harmony stuff going on with the guitar players. They're playing harmony and they're playing unison stuff and in harmony, which is fantastic to listen to. Chris is his vocals are beautiful on this song. Some of his best singing on the record. Very soulful. For me, it's a 10 out of 10 and never a skip for this track, guys.
Fantastic. Hey, Andy, good to see you, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Andy.
Can I remind folks too, while Andy's here, that we're going to be doing our annual EVH show on the 6th of October. We'll be streaming for about 6 to 8 hours, taking into account 3 or 4 time zones. So we're going to have some co-hosts on here. If you guys want to jump on and join us and talk about EVH and what he means to you, and just hang out with us, for 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, jump on. I know that Brad will at some stage. He'll be jumping on. The Rock Professor in the morning will be probably jumping on for a bit. So, yeah. Andy, if you're around, jump on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Simon, you were going to say something.
No, I'm fine. No, I was laughing about the about 6 to 8 hours. Get caffeined up, boys.
Adam Crofts is here. G'day, Adam. Good to see you, brother.
Morning, Adam. Good to see you.
Yep.
That's
Adam,
Brad's mate from Aussie.
Yep. Adam loves the Black Crows. You just saw them recently. Last year, I think it was.
That's fantastic.
He's a Crows nut. He's got a great Crows t-shirt from the last tour. And, yeah.
Fantastic. So, we'll be looking forward to that Van Halen show. So we're going to have a couple of co-hosts on. Hoss is going to jump on with me, and then we'll have Jimmy and John. Brad's going to jump on at some stage too. He might even sneak away and stream from work for a little bit.
We'll see. Don't tell everyone that yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Last track, and as we said, folks, at the intro, that the whole album, bar the last track, were all originals. And this track here is clearly the only cover. It was a song that Bob Marley released on Kaya in '78. And I don't know how influential reggae and Bob Marley was for you guys, but I always had friends, I always had relatives, Brad, that loved Bob Marley. Now, I can never say that I was into reggae, but, reggae music and Bob Marley was always being played. And it was something, Brad, that I got into as I got a little bit older. I started appreciating reggae for the rhythms, the bass playing, that kind of thing. But I was certainly listening to a lot of rock and roll back then. So, I wasn't too conscious of this. But I do remember, Simon, when we got this album, a couple of my friends been really excited by it because they were reggae fans. And so when they played this and then we played the originals, I thought, oh, okay, I see the similarities there. But then I worked out, Brad, a little bit later why they put this on here, because Southern Harmony and the musical harmony thing vibe fits into what the song's about, which is quote unquote a song about God, if you want. I don't know. That's the way I'm reading it. Became an instant classic with my friends here. And after listening to this, Brad and Simon, I'm convinced that this album could have done with one more acoustic track. They could have done one more of their own original acoustic tracks on this, as well as this track.
Yep.
I'm not saying ditch this, but I think if they'd come out with another, it just would have given it a little bit more balance. Again, I'll be interested to hear what Brad especially has to say about this.
Yes.
What I like about this, after listening to it over the last, say, 10, 15 years, Brad and Simon, I mentioned it with a couple of tracks on here that it was suited, in my mind, to just that basement vibe in Exile on Main Street, when we've seen the famous photos. And this is one of those songs where I could see that they could be singing this in a basement somewhere and just having a bit of fun with this track. And I think they were, Brad. I don't know a lot about this, and I purposely didn't do any research on this because I wanted, again, for you guys, if you know anything, to pass it on. So I get the impression that they just did this because it was spontaneity from the band. It was spontaneity thing, Simon. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think they played this live a lot. And because of that, I'm giving it 9 out of 10. Love the vibe. Rock Professor.
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, it's It's a kind of, yeah, it's kind of, it reminds me of kind of 70s Stones rather than 60s Stones. Like that kind
Yeah.
of slightly ramshackle kind of drums, congas,
Yeah.
kind of, it's like the Stones play reggae kind of thing, It's got sort of a, in
And they've
their
done
own
it.
special way. Keith, yeah, well, precisely, yes, absolutely. I think my impression was it was more of a 70s Stones thing than a 60s thing, but
Yep.
I could be wrong with that. But that's kind of where I feel about it. And I agree. It sounds like a sort of a bit, to me, it's coming at this fresh, by the way. It sounds to me a bit like sort of, we've had a few jazz cigarettes, and we're sitting around in the studio, and somebody strikes up with an acoustic strum, and people kind of join in a kind of rather ramshackle kind of way, and all of a sudden there's a groove and there's a feel, and there's a, somebody's in there with a bit of piano, and there's a bit of gospel backing singing as well, and all of a sudden we've got ourselves a track, kind of thing that somebody's recorded. That to me, to me, it's a bit like a sort of coda to the album. Really, it's a different kind of vibe and a different kind of feel. I gave it a 7 out of 10, but I wouldn't skip it. But I
Cool.
didn't feel it was one of the stronger things on it. I myself, as I say, only having
Yeah.
listened to it this week and not coming across it before that, that's how I kind of feel. I mean, I feel like the album has a focus, it has a sound, it has a thing, and it's got those different things in it. And this is a bit
No,
different.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to
Go on,
interrupt you.
interrupt
You've
me.
hit the nail on the head. You've hit the nail on the head.
Am I over justifying myself?
Yes.
Okay. I'll stop digging then, Brad.
Oh, look, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Simon. So I won't repeat too much of what you said, but I think it's a wonderful choice for a last song of this album. It is like the coda of the album. It's I love the acoustic vibe. I agree with Andrew. There should have been possibly another acoustic track on here, but as well as this to round the album out. Sounds like they were, humorously, I'm going to say this. I'm not being serious, but it sounds like they're either bashing tools around in a shed that's very reverb for percussion.
Can I say, Brad? Could I say, that modern music that goes dish, 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 dish.
Yeah.
I always say, oh, some bloke building something in his shed again.
But yeah, I love the sound effects that they're using for percussion with the reverb sound. I thought that was very cool. I'm assuming it is a bass guitar that we're hearing there, but he's playing it, giving a double bass feel to it. Great BVs, has a very loose feel. It's almost like a chant, I guess you could put it that way for the song. For the most part, it's Chris Robinson sort of scatting and vamping across the jam. I think it is a jam, and they just press record and off they went. They wanted to capture it and put it on the album. Could have quite easily been left off the album.
Yep.
And they could have put another track on there, which we haven't ranked. But I wanted to mention, I think it's important that if anyone goes and has a listen, there's another song that they did called 99 Pounds, and I think that could have gone on the album as well. And there was a slow version of Sting Me and that they recorded as well, which is on a remastered version I've got, which for me, the bass sounds good on this, guys. So this was remastered.
Funny that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember what year this was remastered, but it's a remastered version. It says there in the corner. So it's got the extra two tracks, Sting Me and 99 Pounds at the bottom. I still reckon they should have put 99 Pounds on there. It's a great song. But what way to round out the album with a bit of fun. It sounds like they just sort of, had themselves a bit of a wacky tobacco cigarette and press record. That's what it sounds like to me, guys. 8 out of 10 for me for that song. Never a skip though.
Yeah, I think you're right. Go and check out those tracks. Those tracks are on Spotify too, and also on Apple Music, folks, that Brad has mentioned. If you want to go and check them out. So Shake Your Money Maker, this album, and then their third album, America, is just, if you got those three albums, you're fine.
Three Snakes, One Charm. I still reckon that's a great album if you get into it.
I'll give Brad that, because that's got some great tracks on there too. Remarkable album because, as the Rock Professor said with his in his introduction, just so unlike anything else that we were listening to in 1992, and I think that's one of the instant attractions, Brad, that got me. Besides sounding completely different from everything else on the radio, you know, they looked different. They looked cool. They looked hot. They looked like they were going to get all the chicks.
They did. Yes, John, you're right. 98. I've got it here on the back of this packaging. So
yeah, we do look forward. We might come back. We might do a midweek show or something like that when the re-release comes out, and we might talk about the re-release, or do maybe a Sunday show with us and talk about it, because we've all clearly enjoyed talking about this album. So maybe the remasters might be something for us to just touch base on without having to go through completely, but maybe doing a quick hour show. What do you reckon?
Sounds good. Sounds great. Sounds good. There was I was also going to mention that there is a bunch of what came out later, the lost tapes and all that as well, which were some albums that were shelved by the band. So that's worth looking into as well. But we'll talk about that another time. I won't get into it now.
I'm glad that the Robertsons have buried the hatchet. Clearly they seem to be getting on. I've gone on to their website. They've got a tour booked out October, November, December, and January, I understand, Brad, for about another 4 or 5 months, you know. They hope to have toured when that international germ thing spread, and they couldn't. So they were all ready to go because they'd all, you know, reformed, done all the tour, done all the interviews saying that they've forgiven each other, they love each other, and they're all back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll talk about. There's a lot of other things that we should talk about related to the Black Crows, but we'll leave it for another time. I just, you know, overall, I think this record is a diverse and dynamic album, showcases the Black Crows skillfully blending blues, soul, and rock. You know, it's characterized by that strong vocal performances, by the backing end vocals and Chris Robinson, intricate guitar work, lyrics, and the key ingredient for me is Mark Ford.
Thank you, bro. Jump on, John, if you want to. If you're going to come on our EVH show, Rock Professor, you got a quick conclusion, and then you can say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll cruise, because I'm looking at the time. We've been on here for 2 hours and 20 minutes. I don't know about you, but we're hungry. We're hungry. We're hungry.
Got old man bladder trouble. Never mind hungry. So I agree. I think it's as I said at the beginning, as you said, Andrew, it feels to me like, you know, an album kind of slightly out of time with the with its surroundings, out of place in its surroundings of 1992. What's going on in music then? But that's no bad thing. They had a singular vision and followed it, and you know, produced some great music, and harking back to bands that that we all love, you know, from the early 70s. And I think that that makes it really worthwhile and interesting that they picked up on that. You know, these days those influences are not nearly so overt, are they? Very few bands are actually, that I can think of, are actually doing that in such an overt way, but making it their own, you know, bringing in the southern influences and stuff, and you know, progressing that style of music forward and stuff. So I've really enjoyed listening to it this week. It's been great. To cruise around, listen to it, and fantastic. So thank you. Great choice, Andrew. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And I will say thanks to Greg Roberts Tune. Of course, lots of comments from Greg. Fantastic. Andy Carson. Thanks, Andy, for going back to bed. we put you to sleep, Andy. That's a good idea. That's always worth something. John ZD351 on fire as always, John. It's, who else we got? We had Andy Carson and Adam Crofts. two ACs. That's one after the other is amazing. So we've got Ellen as well. Thanks, Ellen. Good to see you, and thanks for your scoring and all of that, and fantastic for your support. We had going back. We had John and Ellen and Greg, and we had Gretch Zeppelin as well. Dropped by. Fantastic to see you, Gretch. Sorry, guys, it's scrolling. There's lots of comments, which is fantastic. Gretch, Arvin as well. Arvin, cool. Nice to see you, Arvin. Thanks for dropping by. Nelson as well. Nelson Rodriguez, he dropped in as well earlier on. There he is at the top. Sleep well, Nelson. Jim, Jazz Thunder 50. Nice to see you, Jim. Hope you have a good day, and I hope you enjoy the album when you listen to it later. Quentin James, he dropped by as well to say hi. Very cool. But hopefully I've got everybody out of that. But if I didn't, thank you anyway, and thanks all for dropping by. And we'll see you next week. Do we know what we're doing next week?
Who's picked next week?
I think it's mine, gentlemen.
Brad's pick
Awesome.
next week.
Let's
Awesome.
talk about it off stage.
Okay,
Backstage.
no worries. Yeah, cool.
Rock and roll.
Fantastic.
Rock and
Lovely.
roll. Be safe.
Yeah, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
And if you don't want to watch us for 2 hours and 20 minutes talk about the album, go and listen to it then. We don't care.
It's for 50 minutes.
or-
Shorter.
But just move on. Just move on. Don't worry about it.
Move on.
Right.
Oh,
Jog
dear.
on. See you later. Bye.